Welcome. This is Peter Voogd, founder of the prestigious GameChangers Academy, and thanks for tuning into our monthly Millionaire video series, where we interview the world's most elite and successful entrepreneurs, CEOs, entertainers, and real game changers. People that I have massive respect for, and people that are not just making a huge difference in their industry, but in the world. And you're in for a special treat today as we finally got everything situated. He's been traveling like crazy. He's tired, but he still did not want to miss this call with you game changers. I feel like he's a true business genius with the results he's gotten. He's the co-founder of many different companies, including Reef Dispensaries, Slaps Underwear, Ignite, Tryke companies, Bloom Dispensaries, Axis Capital Corporate, as well as many others. And I found out he also did some investing with a mutual friend, Cody Sperver. He's done real estate, and now he does consulting work all over the globe for some of the world's biggest companies. I'm excited to have you, man. Matt, what's up?
What's up, brother? Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Of course, man. Thanks for being here. I know you've been crazy busy. We just talked about how sometimes tiring it is traveling nonstop, doing blogs, doing videos, having meetings, doing all these things. But I appreciate for you taking the time to finally take a deep breath and add some value, man.
Absolutely, brother. Anything to, spread the word and help the cause. So.
I've been curious and I've been studying your stuff, and I love what you're all about and what you've done. How does a sixth generation Montana boy not only get into business, first of all, but thrive at business? Take us back real quick. When did you know you love the game of business, and how does that happen that a Montana boy gets into business and then thrives? That's rare.
I haven't really ever talked about this component, but when I was a kid, call it 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, I got super into sports card trading. And so I created this little business out of that. I figured out the odds, and me pulling these special cards out of these packs and then selling them to my friends or trading them for services or, a cool new bike or whatever it may be. So I was always, ducking and jiving and, deal making from a very early age.
So do you remember, did you realize that you loved it then, or was it just out of necessity that you had to make money?
I enjoyed the hustle. I didn't really know what I was doing. Looking back, I know now, but then I was just like, this is a lot of fun. I'm having fun with my friends. I'm making some money. But looking back, it was definitely a hustle at a very young age.
And you haven't stopped ever since, man?
No. Then I, started dabbling in some different things in high school. I started an auto detail company when I was a sophomore in high school, as well as helping my grandparents on their 5,500 acre farm. And so, I figured out that manual labor was not necessarily for me, but I love the game. I love negotiating. I love, putting deals together and everything in between. So looking back, it all makes sense to me now, but I couldn't make sense of it at the time, if that resonates.
Oh, 100%. So people see you now, they see you traveling the world. They see you with not just celebrities, but some of the biggest business titans. And people don't understand sometimes the struggles you went through and the challenges. You even talked about a year or two ago, the challenges you've gone through, and probably now. But take me back to when you got into real estate and it took you 6 months to get off the ground, to close your first deal, and you had a recession. Take me back to there mindset wise, because you must have developed that hunger to never, ever let up and build these big businesses you've done now. But take me back to that moment where most people would call that a failure.
So I was a very stubborn, driven individual. I never took no for an answer. And there was a lot of people that were doubting me and what I was capable of. I was the only one that knew what I was capable of. There's a little saying that says, the great knew they were great before anyone else did. I had that mentality the whole time, even though no one else knew about it. And so me getting into real estate and essentially leaving a very solidified career, which was an electrician apprentice at the time, I up and left, walked away from that one day. And I went and got my real estate license, and my family was upset, angry. They couldn't figure out why I would leave such a good solidified job that paid $75,000 a year to go maybe, have a job in real estate, or an excuse of a job in real estate. So they couldn't really wrap their heads around that. I was like, I'm doing this. I'm going to prove everyone wrong, and I'm not going to stop until I do. So what I went on and did is, because I didn't have access to a lot of money, my family didn't have any money, what I did is I went and applied for 40 credit cards and got approved for 20, because they don't cross-check each other. So that was my initial capital I used to start my real estate career. That's what I had to live on, because I didn't have any money or surplus saved up. I just kind of wung it, and I basically put my back up against a wall making myself figure it out. Now, this is when I was 20 years old, and when I was 20, I looked like I was 12. I wore a suit that was too big. I didn't know how to, I didn't know what to wear, how to act. It was falling off me. I probably looked like a homeless kid. And so it was a struggle. I didn't know what to do. I just was trying to figure it out as I go. And it took me 6 months to close my first house. And I'd exhausted all my credit limits on my credit cards. And about a week before I put that deal together and closed it, I had $4 left in my account, and all my credit cards were maxed out. And that's the moment when I felt defeated. And I remember sitting in my truck in the back of the real estate office, and I started crying one night. I think it was 7 or 8 at night, and I had Kanye's sophomore album playing. And after a few songs of me crying, I was like, "No, this isn't going down like this. I'm not going to be looked at as a failure. Like, I'm going to get my ass back in there, and I'm going to make it happen." And from that moment forward, my mindset had changed to being a scared, young, naive boy to being a successful man in my mind, whether I was or wasn't. But the power of the mind is so powerful that it will actually trick you into thinking things, and they can become real life. So I walked my ass back in there, and I put a deal together. And then after that, deal after deal started to follow. But most people would have stopped and gave up in the truck.
You had nothing.
I was an inch away from success, but I was at my breaking point. So in my opinion, most people would have got out of that truck and said, "I'm done. I'm going to go back and get a normal job, just like everyone else."
So was it a combination of things that you were thinking about? Was it Kanye spitting fire in your ear mixed with all the doubters?
It was everyone saying I couldn't do it. Everyone saying that, I was a mess up. I was a screw up. I should have went to college and used my intelligence to become a scientist or a doctor or something prestigious. And it was Kanye spitting fire, because he's kind of the underdog come up guy, right? And so that was fueling me. All these people saying I couldn't do something, which it drove me into fury. And then I needed to see what I was fully capable of, and giving up is just not in my DNA.
So fast forward, you said too, you started to see different opportunities in the real estate, not just houses, but now buying properties or buying land and sourcing them. Where'd that come about in this journey? Was that right after that you almost quit real estate? You started seeing that?
So after I started closing real estate deals, I'm a quick study. So once I figure something out, I fully immerse myself and I go all in. Now, in real estate, what I did is I figured out how everything worked very quickly. So I became friends with the big money guys, the investors. Then I'd find the parcels of land that they could then go subdivide, turn into lots. I then made friends with the builders, sold the lots to the builders, had them build spec houses, and then sold the spec houses to the general population for the builders. And then I went and found another big piece of land and did it all over again. So that's really was my secret sauce in real estate. And it did really give me a full understanding of real estate in general. But not only that, it showed me how people react, how they act, how they psychologically treat a large transaction, such as their biggest purchase of their life, which would have been their house, right? And so it just showed me so much about how the world works in the business side of things, as well as the human psychology side of things. And it really, in my opinion, gave me a huge leg up in the whole business world generally. Now, if you fast forward, I didn't really get back into real estate until 2017, just because my mind was so laser beam focused on the cannabis space.
So after that, I want to know the timeline, because what you've done is extraordinary at a young age leading up. So let's talk about this, Matt, and then we'll kind of dive into some Q&A. From that moment to leading up to the $100 million deal that you closed when you were 28, where's the in-between?
The in-between would be, I'm ripping along in real estate. I'm 22 years old. I'm arrogant. I'm untouchable because I just come up from, rock bottom, right? I bought a $675,000 house on my 22nd birthday. I had the new cars. I was a young, arrogant kid. Like, it is what it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. So, fall of 2008 rolls around, and I see the writing on the wall, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so overextended. The sky is falling for the entire world. I'm done. So my world started to come down on me. I was over leveraged, overextended, and the money stopped coming in. No one was buying real estate. So I tried to do some creative stuff, put some creative owner financing deals together. It was just a shit show, to be completely honest. So I was young, but I saw what happened with the tech boom, right? I'm like, I saw all these crazy people make ungodly amounts of money, and I'm not sure why. So then after that, fast forward, that bubble pops. Then you go over to the subprime mortgage bubble, right? Which infiltrated the entire world. And I saw a ton of people get rich there. And I'm like, all right, am I missing something? So I'm like, what's the next big thing? Because I'm hopping on it now and I'm going to ride the whole thing up. I'm going to work my ass off the whole way. And, you know, after several months of just immersing myself online, I finally, well, let me back up a little bit. At the tail end of my real estate career, people started calling me and saying, I want a house on 5 acres with a big shop. I'm like, hey, I call them back. Hey, good news. I found you the perfect house, the one you love. It's on 5 acres, no shop. They're like, no deal. I'm like, what do you mean no deal? No deal. I need a shop. I'm like, what's the big deal about these shops? Why do you care? We want to grow marijuana. I'm like, what the fuck would you want to do that for? So that's kind of sparked my interest, right? I'm like, what's up with this? All these people want to grow marijuana. So that's what really engaged me into doing more research online about it. And I fully immersed myself. I'm like, all right, that's it. I've seen people get in their cards. I've seen what it's done to some of my friends, how it's helped their lives. This is the next big thing, whether the federal government wants to say it or not. At that moment in time, I went and got my medical marijuana card in Montana. I went and bought a 400 watt metal halide out of a warehouse for $50. And I went and got some seeds. And I was like, I'm going to grow some high time shit in my garage. Watch this. It's coming off a big win in real estate. I was like, how hard could this be? It's extremely hard. There's chemistry involved, science, grow conditions, dealing with live biological specimens, so on and so forth. Fell off the tree again, hit every branch on the way down, eventually figured it out just like I did in real estate, and then just accelerated the thing. And, you know, inside of my first year, I had one of the largest cultivations in Montana. We were invested into about $3 million worth. Was cultivating over 3,000 plants. The state of Montana really didn't like the exploding, emerging cannabis market, so they called an emergency session early 2010. They changed all the laws and said every caregiver can only have 3 patients or grow 18 plants. Well, I had over 3,000, so, you know.
A little more than they wanted.
That would have been prison time for sure. So I'm like, all right, I'm not in the business of going to jail. Shut the whole thing down. I'm out of here. And so I literally just left a $3 million cultivation sitting there. Montana legislation came in, said, no buenos, we're changing the program on you. You guys are done. And at that moment in time, I'm like, I have to pivot right now. Looked around the country, found that Arizona had the most favorable new laws to create a large cannabis enterprise. I didn't have to deal with this nonsense in Montana anymore. That minute, I packed up all my things in my truck, my Silverado, and drove down to Arizona. What I'm getting at is if you see something coming down the road, don't be scared to pivot quickly. I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls of entrepreneurs is not pivoting quick enough. Ask Kodak how that worked out for them, you know? Mm-hmm. So I drove down to Arizona, started, the program hadn't rolled out yet. So I started a chain of, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
All right, cool. So I started a chain of hydroponic stores called UGrow, and that's kind of how I networked through the underground cannabis community in Arizona. So they were rolling out 131 privileged licenses. I knew that I could never get one of these licenses. I'm on my own. I'm a 26-year-old kid, just turned 26 in Arizona, and I'm brand new. Why would they give one of these extremely valuable licenses to some kid that just showed up in town? I then networked more so into the political arena, find a gentleman who's very decorated as a senator, find out his son is very interested in getting in the space. I'm like, perfect, let's partner, and then we'll put your dad on all the applications. That's what we did. We applied for 5 licenses. It ended up being a lottery system, so it was all irrelevant. We ended up with a Sedona license. Cool, that's awesome, but it wasn't high enough volume for me. So went and cut a deal with the gentleman that won the downtown Phoenix location, bought it for $450,000. Everyone thought I was this batshit crazy kid out of Montana. Like, who in the world would pay $450 grand for one of these pieces of paper? Fast forward to today, that location's worth over $20 million. So there's a little bit of, risk, guesswork, all that stuff involved. Then went and raised about $7 million privately for those licenses to build everything out and keep doing acquisitions. That is the beginning of Bloom Dispensaries. So I acquired 2 more locations. We had 4 retails, 30,000 square feet of cultivation I'd built out, and a laboratory. From there, I ran the thing up to over $1 million a month in revenue in less than 10 months. I had 120 employees reporting to me, and that's the time when I started to get some of the bigger money guys. I started gaining their attention. So edgier family offices started calling me. Some private equity guys started calling me. They're like, hey, what's your story? How long have you been doing this? How can you do that again? And it was just kind of, I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, okay, yeah, of course I can do it again. So I ended up becoming rather close to a family office out of Florida. They came in, flew in, tried to buy Bloom, tried to buy out the existing investors, and they wanted to inject it with a bunch of capital and do a nationwide play. My initial investors wanted an extreme return on their money, like 10 times their money, and had been in play for less than a year. The family office said, no, that's not going to work. So they left. They then called me maybe a week later and said, can you fly to Florida? We really need to talk to you. So I hopped on a jet, went over to Florida, met with them for about 6 hours. Finally, they said, we don't even care about Bloom. We don't care about anything. We just want you. It's like, okay, well, give me a proposal. So they shot me a proposal, which included, capitalizing the company with $100 million. I just turned 28 years old.
So I want to go back because I love that story. I could hear that all the time because it's like the definition of trial, error, adapt, adjust, failure, doesn't matter. It's not defining me. Next step, continuing to get more mentally tough. I love that. But then I want people to understand this, Matt. You're becoming irreplaceable in the process because you're doing so many things others aren't willing to do, whether it's due diligence, whether it's continuing to get punched in the face and getting back up. So they didn't say, I wanted your company. They eventually said, I want you. Entrepreneurs need to understand that if they don't become valuable, if they're not irreplaceable, they can easily be bought out and no one's going to want to give them opportunities. So I love that you realized at that moment that it was you they wanted, not just the dispensary. So that was probably a pretty big confidence booster for you in that moment too, wasn't it?
That was the first moment in time when I really did realize that I was an extremely valuable part of the chain, right? And I had immersed myself in every nook and cranny of that company. And if they would have pulled me out of that company, it would have collapsed. It would have imploded. There we go. So yep. what I will say to every young entrepreneur, and I'm a millennial myself, so I'm not bashing on everyone, but there's a public stigma attached to millennials that we don't like to work, we stare at our phones all day, we're entitled, and we want. We're takers, we're not givers. And what I will say is, and I've seen it, people come up to like, well, what's in it for me? What do I get? What's my pay? And what I would challenge people to do is show up, show how much value you add, show how valuable you are, and you will get rewarded accordingly, I promise. It might not be today or tomorrow, but over time you will be rewarded accordingly. The other thing I will say is you touched on, being very bullheaded and just getting through no matter what, right? Persistence. You have to be extremely persistent and you have to be willing to have extremely thick skin and not take no for an answer. Because you have to go the extra mile that everyone else isn't willing to go. If you want to live a life that no one else can live, then you have to do things that no one else will do. And it's easy to say that, it's tough to do it. I mean, I landed last night at 12 at night. My ass was at the gym at 6:15 this morning. Like that's what I'm talking about. Most people would have stayed in bed and slept, but no, get your ass up and go seize the day. There's no excuses. This world is a very cold, cruel place, and the sooner you can figure that out as a person, and that you realize that this world doesn't owe you anything, the better off you'll be, and the farther you'll go as an entrepreneur and just as a human being in general.
Hey, what's up guys? If you like this video, I think you'll really enjoy these videos right here. And also please make sure you subscribe, hit the subscribe button below. We have a lot of amazing content coming out. See you guys soon.